Glenn, it's commonly acknowledged that you're still one of the best midfield players around in the country at present. How long do you think you can still continue playing for?
That's a difficult one, Paul, because obviously I've had 3.5 years of player manager. The mental side and the physical side is very difficult. It's not an easy job, but it's one that I felt was right for me if I could still affect the game. I feel I'm a player even if I was on for half an hour at certain times, that I'm the sort of player that can produce something that could change the game. So in that respect, maybe another season, or it might be the end of this season, I don't know. I think if I'd have just carried on playing, I feel I could have continued perhaps for another 2 seasons after this, but it does take its toll, the mental side and the physical side of the 2 jobs.
Yeah, because coming on to that, I mean, it must be a hell of a mental strain having, as a player manager, all the responsibilities of the managerial side, yet you've got to go out there and tune your mind whenever you come on in the game to tune it into focusing into actually playing. I mean, how do you manage that? It's
a little bit, at this stage it's different than the last 3 seasons, because the 2 at Swindon, I was playing from the beginning of the season right through, had an injury spell in the first year, came back in the side near the end, and we just missed out on promotion. The second year I played, I think, about 50 games when we got promotion, with cup games as well. So it was a full, solid season. The first year at Chelsea, I started the season, we tried to bed a few things down. I got injured and came out of things until the end of the season again. This year I feel it's been more difficult. This is the toughest season as a player manager, because the pressure's obviously on you as a manager of such a big club. But I found that coming on as substitute, the type of player that I am, and obviously over the years people have seen me, the pressure is on your shoulders even more. There's so much more expected, even if you're coming on for half an hour. And I found that quite interesting at this stage, at 37, going on 38, to actually find out there's a different aspect of football that I never dreamt that I'd be facing. So I've had to deal with that as well. But I'm really I was keeping one eye, on the European scene, with obviously the Scottish and the Irish and then the foreign rule. It does give you a problem, and me being English and still fit and able, I thought that might come into play. So that was the main object and the main reason why I haven't hung the boots up yet.
If we look back to the beginning of your career, do you remember? I mean, I remember actually my debut. I mean, I was marking then Vince Hilaire, who you remember in the 80s was was a terrific player against Crystal Palace. Had a very, very bad time. But do you actually remember your debut? Have you got many memories about your debut for Tottenham?
Yeah, I think you always remember your debut, and it was. I came on early on in the season. I think against Norwich, I came on as a sub against Norwich. But my first full debut was at Stoke. Went to Stoke, played. I was like a bit of a beanpole at the time, big long sideboards. It's funny to look back now, but no. I mean, I managed to score. I think it was about 25-yarder past Shilton, so it wasn't a bad way to start your career. And that's one that obviously sticks in your mind. But when you look back, you don't believe it's yourself. You think, no, that wasn't me. I can't remember them days.
If we all have heroes. I've got my heroes. When you think about Pelé and Puskas and Johan Cruyff, who are your real heroes?
I think in football terms, I think I was brought up then as a Spurs supporter. As a young kid, I lived in Harlow, so I was very closely associated with Spurs even from a young age. And Jimmy Greaves was at his height then. He was one that obviously was a favourite of mine. And then Martin Chivers came when I was about 12, when I was associated schoolboy at Tottenham. He was the one that was the idol of the fans. I think on the football side, I think George Best was the one that really hit me in the eye for what he did on the football pitch.
Yes.
I feel whether George, I've heard George quoted to say he wouldn't change a thing. Now, I really don't think that's true. I think he would change a few things now, looking back. But on the football pitch, he was a genius. If he'd have understood his abilities and what I think life was about a little bit more, I think he'd have continued and even had a more successful career. But on the pitch, he was a genius, and I used to love watching him play.
I'm sure.
Sorry, can we just tilt it a bit? Sure.
Yeah, sure.
They would into that.
Okay, sweet.
drop the mic a bit.
Sorry.
That's great.
Yeah. Glenn, I'm sure that you've played in some memorable games over the last 15 or so years, both at domestic level, international level, playing in Europe, World Cups, European Championships. Is there any real memorable games that really stick in your mind?
There's a couple that obviously individually you remember for whatever reasons. You know, you might have played well and got a good result. There was a couple of games. One, I remember a European tie against Feyenoord at White Hart Lane, which was extra special. You know, probably one of my best games for Spurs. We were 4-0 up after about 20 minutes, and I think I'd laid on all 4 goals. And it was something special. Cruyff was playing again for Feyenoord, and Gullit as well. So that was a special night. And obviously, when you won the FA Cup and the UEFA Cup, then nights are very, very special. There's no two ways about that. But I think if you said there was a highlight, it wasn't necessarily winning things. It was possibly playing in the Aztec Stadium in the World Cup in '86, which was really the as high as you can get. You're playing in the World Cup, and what was the quarter-final then against Argentina, which we all know what happened with the Maradona goal, and the situation all ended up pretty sad. But we'd played against Paraguay there before and beaten them, and I think that, looking back on my career, I think that was it would have been lovely to get to the semi-finals and go on and won the World Cup. That would have been even better, but that passed that group of players by. Hopefully in the future there'll be a set of people that will be working together, and it might happen again for England. I don't know, but that passed us by that year. But looking back, I think that'll always stick in my mind. That the Aztec Stadium full of 100,000 people was something special.
Equally, you always, I've seen many goals that you've scored over the years, many spectacular goals. Is there any goal or goals that actually sort of come into your mind as we're talking now that clearly sticks in your mind?
Yeah, there is one that was. I was fortunate to score, as you say, some very good goals. A lot of them outside of the penalty area. I think the Manchester United League Cup. It was a League Cup game at Tottenham. A volley. I played a 1-2 with Ozzy Ardiles, and I think that's the one that I would always put as my number one. The feeling I got from that goal was something special. And the one at Watford, where I did a nice bit of skill with me back to goal and chipped the keeper. That was a good one for me as an individual. I wasn't having the best of seasons. I think we started off, it was about the 5th or 6th game of the season. I wasn't playing particularly well, and that sort of kick-started my season for me. And they're the two, I suppose, that I can pick out. The goal I scored, perhaps, for England against Bulgaria for the occasion. It was my debut. I think then it was a half volley side foot from the edge of the box. I think them 3 would be ones that I'd look back on my career and say, so far, might just
I was thinking, coming on,
might be able to put another one in. I've only scored one for the club at the moment, so.
Coming on about your England debut, I think it was against Bulgaria in 1979 at Wembley. Do you remember much actually about your debut, about the actual game? Yeah,
I remember quite a bit actually. They're the sort of things that you try and hold on to. Them occasions, you try and hold on and remember them things because they're very special. But I remember scoring that goal, and Wembley's quite a big stadium, probably one of the biggest in the country, but I remember at that given moment I didn't quite know how to react. I didn't know where to run. It was a strange reaction, but one that I was very fortunate to have.
After the FA Cup final in 1987, you subsequently got transferred to Monaco. How, I'll say for a bargain, 800,000.
It might be a bargain there, yeah.
How did you actually find the...
800 pounds.
So secret. How did you actually find playing the European experience? Obviously I was lucky to have 2 years in Italy, and it was great.
Yeah, like yourself, I think it opens your mind completely. I enjoyed the football side of things. I enjoyed the lifestyle. I enjoyed taking my children and Anne, my wife, away. And having to meet new people, new friends, and the football went especially really well for me. Apart from the back end where I got a very bad injury that kept me out for 2.5 years, but the actual football, we won the championship the first year, which was tremendous. Monaco hadn't won it for so many years, and they haven't won it since. So that was a special feeling on the football front. I managed to score. I think it was I don't know, it must be about 35 goals in 2 seasons, so that was good. But I think that the most refreshing thing for me is when I went abroad, that from management, players, media, and supporters to a certain degree. Everything seemed to be totally a different mental attitude over there. They were far more on the wavelength of technical ability, and they loved watching technical players. Never criticised players for what they couldn't do. It was very much analysing all the good things, and really, if I hadn't gone abroad to play, I feel I wouldn't have had any sort of desire to go into management or coaching at that time.
So basically you're saying that it was a big influence. A lot of the experience there you took from there and you used that in your managerial...
It recharged my batteries up. I think I needed the change as a footballer, but I didn't realise how much I needed the change as a person, and then it was going to kick-start me into my next sort of phase in my career, if you like. I worked with a guy called Arsene Wenger, the manager, and he was terrific manager. Learnt a lot from him, and so all in all, it was a great experience for me.
Glenn, as you well know, the prices paid for players now in the market is just going really through the roof. I mean, what is your feelings about the amount of money now being spent on players?
It's a very difficult one, and one that I'm a little bit scared of, really, in the sense of football in general. I think the Italians got carried away with it, and even the fact that they're getting big crowds over there, and they pay probably 3 times as much to watch a game than we do over in this country, and still they got their fingers burnt. And I think we're in a very dangerous situation over the next couple of years if it just keeps escalating. There's no way that clubs can afford them sort of fees that are going around at the moment, 6 million, 7 million. I'm not so sure that they consistently can deal with 2.5 million, because if it was just about a business being run from gate receipts coming in and possibilities of some sponsorship, clubs just couldn't afford that. They just couldn't afford that. Possibly Manchester United. The rest of the clubs are relying on individuals to come in and put their money, and that's fantastic, and good luck to them clubs and good luck to them people that want to do that. If the economy changes, if their businesses were to go down the drain, God forbid, what are they going to do with their football club? And I think the lesson is there's a couple of clubs abroad in Holland and Belgium where that's happened, and it's left that club absolutely distraught and finished. And I think we're getting into that scenario at the moment, and it's a dangerous scenario to have for the future. It really is. How we stop it is a different question. I haven't got the answer to that, but it's one that we need to address. I feel if we're not going to see ridiculous amounts that football just cannot afford.
Sorry, can we just change the angle again?
It says pretending to be.
Monaco. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Glenn, when you came back to England following your spell in Monaco with a terrible knee injury, you came to Chelsea on a non-contractual basis. Did you ever imagine, whilst you was working here at Stamford Bridge, that one day you'll end up being the manager?
No, I didn't. No, Paul. No, not at all. I think the idea, Bobby Campbell was the manager at the time, and he asked me over and said, like, if you want to use the facilities here. I think he had one eye on if I did get fit, he might have wanted a year's contract. And what was mentioned as well, I met Bobby and Ken Bates. There was a little inclination that possibly on the coaching staff, if it didn't go so well, that I might take a position there. But no one. We didn't really sit down and talk about it. It was just a little bit of a introductory sort of conversation. Ironically, six months I think I was here working away and trying to get fit, and the knee was still giving me plenty of problems. And the call from Swindon. The call from Swindon actually came up the day I played in the reserves here for Chelsea. So about 5 minutes before I left the house, the phone went. Peter Day, who I knew from my Spurs days, was secretary at Swindon, and said, "You fancy talking?" So, I had a difficult day that day. I had to play a game for Chelsea against Watford reserves, which we won 5-0. And then I had to meet with Swindon, and I decided to go to Swindon.
Regarding England, when the job became vacant, obviously there's a lot of managers mentioned, yourself included amongst that. Do you think in Terry Venables we've got the right man for the job?
I do. I said it at the time. I really feel with all his vast experience that he's had at domestic, club level, he went away to one of the biggest clubs in Europe, Barcelona, and was successful there. and that was a pressurised situation, a real pressurised job. He came back to Tottenham and they won the cup. He then had a lot of private problems, let's put it that way. And I think, to a certain degree, that has really given him a little bit of a stepping stone, if you like, for the England job. Because the amount of problems and the pressure he was under, which the England manager becomes under when you become England manager, the England manager's job, there's not many people you could say this about, but was probably easier than what he'd just gone through. So whatever pressure is thrown at him in this England job, he'll be able to relate back to them days when there was all these problems for him, and use that as an experience. And I don't think he'll get anywhere near the problems that he'll have as an England manager. And most managers, that never happens. You know, the England job is a real high-pressure job, and some can handle it and some can't. And most of them, since South Ramsey, have failed on the football side or for whatever reasons, the media being one. But I think Terry's had to deal with the media for his personal problems, and I think this is secondary to that, and I think he's going to become even better. But I think football-wise, he's definitely the right man for the job. He knows how to treat players. He knows how to get the best out of class players, and I've always felt possibly that he's had the talent as a coach, which more than club players. So now he's working with the cream of the country. He can really put his ideas across and really get the team functioning how he wants to. Plus, he's in a nice position where he hasn't got to play qualifying football. He's already qualified. So there's a major step there already.
Yeah, I mean, you actually, yourself personally, you gained 53 full England caps under Ron Greenwood and Bobby Robson. Do you feel, had there not been managers, your tally would have significantly increased? I
think there's a to a certain degree there. I think I would have had more caps. I mean, I've always won. I've never complained about that situation. They were the set of rules that were there under the manager. You have to deal with that. I'm sure there's players at the club now who would say, well, if it was a different manager, perhaps I'd be playing because it'd be a different style of football. I'm very proud of the 53 that I got. There was a lot of skillful, creative footballers in the past that only got 2 or 3, and they seem to be writing about the game nowadays and putting their penny's worth in now. Perhaps they should have, put it on the pitch when they were playing. So I'm happy with the 53 that I've got. If Brian Clough had been manager at the time, or Terry Venables earlier, who knows? The philosophy and the whole shape of the way England played might have been built round myself. But it didn't happen, and as I say, I enjoyed my England career very much so, and learnt a lot from Bobby Robson and Ron Greenwood.
Did you actually feel that you played to your full potential?
No, I never felt that, being quite honest, I never felt that I was played. I think out of all my 53, I was played twice in a position where I had off the front, if we sort of terminology now, off the front of 2 strikers. I was always sort of playing right side midfield, wide on the right, or restricted a little bit. So out of the 2, ironically, that was probably my 2 best games for England as well. So, I don't think I was used right. But as I say, when you're being chosen for your country and the manager tells you to play a certain way or in a certain position, you're proud enough and you want to do a job for the manager and you want to do a job for yourself and the country. So you get on with the job.
Turning to Chelsea now, I mean, they've not won nothing for a very, very long time. And, obviously you've come into the club, and over the last 18 months, generally, there's no doubt the club has made a lot of progress. What's your long-term plans for Chelsea Football Club? Yeah,
I mean, I've come to Chelsea. I had offers from other clubs. I could have gone to other clubs, but I felt it was right that I come to Chelsea. I did that with Swindon. I went with my gut feeling, and I did it with Chelsea. And I won't be happy until we've won something. And as you say, we've come along. There's a hill to be climbed, and to get to that top of the hill might take a few years, but we're on the way up. Even though we got to the final last year, and that was the first 12 months of the job that I'd been in here. We've had European football, which at this present time we've got a second leg against Bruges at home, and training 1-0. But there's a good possibility, I feel, we can get through that into the semi-finals. Our league form is something that I really feel we need to put right. We've still got enough time to do that to the end of the season. But no, we're on a hill, we're going up that hill, and it's going to take a bit of time. I think the supporters have been patient. There's obviously frustrations come in every now and again when results don't go so well. Long as it's always for the right reasons they're frustrated, I don't mind that, because they're desperate for the club to do well. But I feel they can see an improvement in the football and in the. They've had something to shout about the cup final last year. They've had the European trips this year, so it must be a bonus for them as well as for myself and the players and everyone involved at the club. But there's a long way to go, but I feel we're progressing and getting there slowly.
Yeah, I feel personally that there's been a great success story with Chelsea in Europe because I think we've performed very, very well. But looking back at the cup final, I think that was a great day for the club and the supporters because I actually felt then Chelsea actually come on the landmark. We were there, people knew about us. What was your memories about the actual game, the cup final? How did you really feel?
They're very mixed, obviously. I really felt, I mean, there's a few people who said things in the press recently about last year's cup final, and they were totally out of order what they said, saying that we just turned up. I mean, for 60 minutes, 65 minutes, we were a better side, and if we'd have gone in 1-0 at half time, which I felt we were deserving, it could have been a complete different story. We've actually got beaten 4-0 in the record books. That's always going to be there, and it's always one that's going to sort of pull on my heartstrings a little bit because it wasn't justified. United are an excellent side. They didn't play particularly well, over the full 90 minutes. They played well in the last half hour, and they caught us really, pushing people forward, trying to get back into the game. And there's no better side in probably. In Britain than hitting you on the break than United, and we showed a little bit of inexperience in that period of time as well for players, but they've learnt from that. They've learnt from that. So all in all, it was a mixed emotions. Obviously, very disappointed at losing. Many respects, very proud with seeing Chelsea supporters at Wembley in an FA Cup final, and one that was one for a stepping stone for a lot of the players.
It's funny because in that particular game, I always remember Gavin Peacock's effort against the bar. And I always personally felt that could have been the turning point because a club like Manchester United, if they've got to get a goal back, I always feel, there's a vulnerability there, which possibly the way that we play, we could have exposed them.
Well, that's exactly what happened in the two league fixtures that we had. Gavin, funny enough, strangely enough, scored both the goals against United at the Bridge and at Old Trafford. And then we managed to create a few more chances on the break when they were trying to, come at us. But it didn't go in for us. I mean, I must admit, on the day we were all off our seats. We thought it was in the back of the net, but so be it. We just felt from there and from half time or the way we were performing that we might have gone on and still won it from there anyway. But it wasn't to be. The lads, all I can say is the lads give it their best effort, and that's all you can do sometimes in life. And if the fates go against you, they go against you.
What's your actually hardest part of your job here at Chelsea at the moment?
At the moment, answering your questions.
No, they're not that difficult.
No, it's Paul. There's so many different facets of it that are difficult. They really are. I mean, it's an enjoyable job. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. It's plain as that. There's times when it's more pressurised than others, but you've got to realise it is a job at the end of the day. It's not the be end all of your life completely, but it's one that I've always taken pride in football. And always will do, and I've always won something. I've been a winner in it. So until I've won something, and even when you win something, once you get the taste of it, you want more of it. So a sportsman, as you know yourself, we're a strange sort of breed of person, and there's so many difficult. I think I've said it a few times. I've been known to quote it when I was at Swindon, and I've had to do it when I've been here at Chelsea. The hardest thing I find, it's not letting a player know that he's been dropped on Saturday or he's not playing or whatever. It's letting them young kids when they're 17, 18, and you've got to pull them in and you've got to tell them that they're released and that they're not, going to be offered professional forms. I find that is the thing that really pulls on my heart, and that is the hardest thing that I've ever done. And I think if you keep looking back at that and say, well, you've had to deal with that was hard. Anything else is going to be a doddle after that. So that's how I approached it.
Obviously, Glenn, with all the pressures in football, and you've obviously told us about them, what do you do to get away? What do you, when you're at home, when you're relaxing? Is there any hobbies? What do you do when you get away? If you've got any time away from Chelsea?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Me handicap's gone downhill since I've come into management, that's for sure. You get the odd occasion where you squeeze a game in of golf, but golf and tennis are my two other sports really that I like. Tennis in the summer a little bit, although the knee doesn't allow me to run around the court. I play doubles now rather than singles. I do read quite a bit, or I did do before I got the manager's job, so there's a lot of reading to be done at certain times, job-wise and relaxation. But basically, if I can get as much time with my children, I don't get as much time as I would want, to be quite honest. But we try and make sure, if we are together, that it's a quality time rather than the hours that some other parents might have with their kids. But Anne does a great job bringing our three kids up, and I try as well as I can when I'm there. But really, it's a family situation because we don't get that much time together.
What's your typical day from morning right the way till evening in management?
It's depending on what job entails. There's 101 jobs to be done. I think what it is as a manager, you get up and you try and plan the day, and it's an impossibility. Because you get to the training ground and somebody phones in with flu and somebody's gone down with a hamstring injury, and your training goes out the window and your thoughts for Saturday go out the window, and Peter Shreves calls it the 20-minute edge. So we're always waiting near that phone before any given training day. But there's reports that need to be looked at and studied for games. There's contracts, maybe a player might be in dispute with a contract, and there's the planning of the training, there's the actual training. There might be a situation where you're going off scouting in the evening to a game, which normally the staff would all be out sort of 3 games a week they'd be watching. There's a reserve side sometimes to be chosen and picked with Eddie Nesvetsky. There's just 101 things every single day, and I found early days at Swindon that the minute you started to plan your day, it was an impossibility. There's videos that you study, there's players obviously that you're looking at for the transfer and market, and there's the other side. There's things with Colin Hutchinson that you have to deal with. There's problems that occur on that side, and it's a full-time job, I can assure you. It's non-stop. It's non-stop.
Talking about Colin Hutchinson, because in view of all the recent things that's gone on in the game lately, I mean, I always felt that maybe some of the clubs in this country should look at the way European clubs are run, and in terms of the job description as a manager, because funny enough I was reading about Bobby Robson in the newspaper the other day, and his sole and exclusive area is working solely with the players when it comes to buying players and getting involved in the other side of the things, which entail within your job description, that's all done by third parties. Do you think your job would be a lot easier if you had possibly sort of some responsibilities, say, i.e. with contracts and other problems dealt with by, say, like a chief executive at a club?
Yeah, I think there's some middle ground to be met. I don't know whether I could just hand over to somebody and tell it and let him go and buy the players that you're going to actually coach and mould into a team. I'm not so sure. I think that's too far the other way.
In terms of recommendation, you would recommend that you want that player.
Yeah.
And in terms of all the other dealings with all the third parties and the clubs.
I think with the financial side, I think we're to be honest, we're quite close to that. Although I do deal with the contracts. I do it with Colin.
Yes.
We felt that seems to work possibly better than just the manager doing it. So we've found some middle ground on that situation, and we're quite happy with the way things have worked out. Same with the transfer situation. If there's a transfer going through, then we work it out together. It's not solely down to myself to deal with all the little things. We hand them over. But I read a survey from Parma, what the coach did at the Parma, and I don't know if I'd be happy to get in the middle ground. It seemed too easy for me. It was like an hour on the training ground and that was it. He didn't scout any other teams. He didn't scout players that he was going to buy. I think that was probably... I'd be bored stiff. Perhaps I'll get my handicap down.
And their line's taken from top in the Italian league as well at the moment, Parma. So something's working.
Perhaps we're definitely doing it wrong. Definitely doing it wrong.
Finally, Glenn, just on the match days,